3 days before Thanksgiving, my father sent an email to the family. We all agreed it would be better if Elizabeth didn't come on the Vermont trip. I watched as my siblings and aunt hit reply, all to show their support. I replied, "Consider the matter settled." Then I canceled the $10,000 trip. I'd secretly been funding and forwarded them the cancellation receipt. My name is Elizabeth, and at 35 years old, I was the family fixer. At 11:51 p.m., just 3 days before Thanksgiving, my phone buzzed. It was an email from my father, Richard. Subject: Thanksgiving Plan Update. The message was short, Elizabeth, after speaking with everyone. We've all agreed it would be best if you don't attend the Vermont trip this year. We all just want a peaceful holiday. I scrolled down and saw the reply all thread. My brother, Ryan, agreed it's for the best. My sister Megan A. Drama-free Thanksgiving sounds amazing. My family had just voted me off the island. What they didn't know was that I owned the island. Before I tell you exactly what I did, at 12:03 a.m., let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt invisible in your own family. I didn't cry. I didn't text them asking why I didn't beg for my place back at the table. My blood didn't feel hot with anger. It felt cold, clinical. I stood up from my bed, walked down the hall to my home office, and sat down at my laptop. The time on the screen read 11:53 p.m. I opened a new browser tab. I logged into the luxury rental site for the cabin in Stowe, Vermont. I navigated to My Bookings. And there it was. Thursday, November 23rd to Sunday, November 26th. Stowe Executive Cabin, 6-bedroom. I looked at the total cost which I had paid up front on my own credit card 3 months ago. $10,000. I looked at the cancellation policy. Cancellation within 48 hours of check-in will result in forfeiture of the 20% deposit. I did the math in my head. A $2,000 loss. I thought about the $2,000. I thought about the years of sacrifice. I thought about Megan's drama-free comment. I thought about Ryan's casual, "It's for the best." $2,000 was the price of my freedom. It was the cheapest check I would ever write. My hand didn't shake. I moved the cursor over the button that read, "Confirm cancellation." I clicked it. The screen refreshed. "Your booking has been canceled. A refund of $8,000 is being processed." I took a screenshot of the confirmation page. I made sure the $2,000 penalty fee was clearly visible. I went back to my email. I opened the thread from my father. I hit Reply All. I attached the screenshot. My reply was only one line. Problem solved. The vacation is canceled. Have a peaceful Thanksgiving at home. I hit send. The clock on my laptop read 12:03 a.m. I shut down the computer. I walked back to my bedroom. I plugged in my phone, turned it completely off, not just on silent off, and I went to sleep. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel stressed. I felt free. You might be thinking, Elizabeth, that's an extreme reaction. But you have to understand, this wasn't about one dinner. This was about 15 years of being the silent, invisible bank for my entire family. I was what you'd call the black sheep, or as I preferred, the silent creator. I was the one who actually built a career as a marketing director. My parents, Richard and Karen, ran our family like a business, and my siblings were their prized, non-performing assets. My older brother Ryan was the golden boy, the one they bragged about. He worked in investment banking, which was code for failed 3 startups and living off parental credit cards. They were proud of Ryan, but they ignored the fact that I was the one who secretly paid $20,000 for the coding boot camp he promised would change his life. He dropped out after 6 weeks. I never saw a cent of that money again. In our family, there's a psychological system at play, often called the golden child and the scapegoat, or in my case, the gilded cage and the exile. In this dynamic, the golden child, like Ryan, is put in a gilded cage. He receives all the praise, all the attention, but only as long as he follows the family's script. The exiled child, like me, is pushed to an emotional wasteland, ignored and criticized for being different. But a strange paradox happens in that exile. The exiled child is forced to become competent. They are forced to learn to fly because no one will catch them. The one in the cage, meanwhile, never even knows they have wings. My parents' investment in Ryan's image meant I had to cover his reality. My younger sister Megan was the baby. She got married last year. My parents promised her a beautiful wedding. When the $30,000 catering bill came due, they suddenly hit a cash flow problem. They came to me panicked. "Just a bridge loan, Liz. Just until your father's bonus comes in." I paid it. Directly to the caterer to save Megan the embarrassment. That bridge loan was never mentioned again. And then there was the biggest secret of all. 2 years ago, my father called me, his voice cracking. He'd made a bad investment. They were 3 months behind on their mortgage. The bank was starting foreclosure proceedings. He needed $1,500 a month indefinitely to cover the shortfall. For 24 months, I secretly paid a portion of the mortgage on the very house I grew up in. A house I was rarely invited to, a house where my accomplishments were met with a simple, "That's nice, dear." $36,000. So when I booked that $10,000 cabin for Thanksgiving, it wasn't really a gift. It was just the latest installment payment on my membership in a family that had long since stopped paying their dues. I woke up at 7 a.m. to the bright, cold light of a Wednesday morning. My phone was off. I sat on the edge of my bed for a full minute, just breathing in the quiet. Then I turned it on. It was like setting off an explosion. 32 text messages, 14 missed calls. The screen lit up with a preview from Ryan, 4:17 a.m. "What the hell, Liz, you just ruined Thanksgiving. Call me now." Another from my mother, Karen, 5:30 a.m. "Elizabeth, this is childish behavior. Your father is furious. You have created a massive financial mess, and you need to call and apologize to your brother immediately. Apologize. To him." I deleted the messages one by one. I cleared the missed calls. I was about to put the phone back down when a call came through. It was from a number I didn't recognize, but it was local. I answered. "Hey, Liz." It was Megan, my sister. Her voice was painfully cheerful, breezy, as if it were just a random Tuesday, as if the 11:51 p.m. email thread, the thread she replied to, had never happened. "Megan," I said. My voice was flat. "Listen," she said, talking quickly. "I know things are like super tense right now," she giggled, "but I really need you to send me Grandma's pumpkin pie recipe." I stood still. The request was so absurd, so profoundly audacious, I couldn't form a thought. "I just can't find it anywhere," she went on, "and I figured you'd have it written down. Mom and Dad still really want it for Thanksgiving, even if we just have to make it at home now. So could you just text it to me?" They didn't want me. They had voted me out. But they still felt entitled to my labor. They still wanted my recipe. There's a fine line between tradition and control, and that line is often erased by the word family. When someone uses the memory of something good like a grandmother's recipe to demand compliance right after they've dismissed your feelings, that isn't a request. It's not about tradition. It's manipulation disguised as sentiment. Real tradition is supposed to bring people together. This kind of emotional weapon just uses the past to hold the present hostage. Real tradition would ask, how can we make this special for everyone? This kind of control just declares, this is what you owe us, because this is how it's always been done. I realized in that moment they didn't just see me as the family fixer. They saw me as a utility, a resource to be accessed. They had turned off the Elizabeth service, but they couldn't understand why the pumpkin pie service was turned off too. I hung up the phone. I didn't say a word. I just pressed end. I blocked her husband's number. And then I called David, my fiancé. David, my fiancé, was at my apartment in 20 minutes. He's a lawyer. He sees the world in contracts, clauses, and consequences. He found me standing in the kitchen staring at the phone I just hung up on. They called you, he stated. It wasn't a question. Megan. She wanted Grandma's pumpkin pie recipe. David stared at me, his face blank with disbelief. Then he let out a short, sharp laugh. The recipe? He shook his head. Liz, these people, they're not family, they're parasites. That one word, parasites, was the validation I didn't know I needed. It was the objective external confirmation that what I was feeling wasn't an overreaction. It was a diagnosis. They just voted you out of a $10,000 vacation you paid for, and they're calling for pie. He walked past me into my office and sat at my desk. Okay, this isn't a family dispute anymore. This is a business dissolution. He turned to me, his entire demeanor shifting from supportive fiancé to corporate lawyer. You've been funding them for years. I need the receipts. All of them. What? The receipts, Liz. The bank transfers. The emails. The texts. We are going to calculate exactly what they owe you. For an hour we dug. The $20,000 I sent Ryan for his boot camp, I found the Venmo transaction. David shook his head. A gift. We can't use it. It's a one-way transfer, with no agreement. The $36,000 in mortgage payments. A series of panicked phone calls, I said. No paperwork, just me sending money to their account every month. He said, I owe you one. I offered weakly. Means. Nothing in court, David said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. We need a contract. We need something they signed, something they agreed to. And then I remembered. Megan's wedding, I said. The $30,000 catering bill. My parents hit a cash flow problem. The caterer was going to pull out. I had to. I had to sign something to guarantee the payment. I frantically searched my digital files. And there it was. Catering agreement. Addendum financial guarantor. The contract had been signed by Megan, my father, Richard, my mother, Karen, and me. I had legally bound myself to their debt, which I then paid in full. They had never paid me back. David stopped typing. He looked at the PDF, and a slow, cold smile spread across his face. This is it, he said. This is our leverage. They defaulted on a legally binding contract with you as the co-signer. So I can sue them for the $30,000. David looked up at me. No, Liz, we're not suing them for $30,000. We're going to demand everything, the full $86,000. He explained the strategy. The catering contract was the undeniable ironclad proof of a long-standing pattern of financial exploitation. It was the crack in their armor. He started drafting a new document. It wasn't an email. It was a formal legal demand letter. They wanted a Thanksgiving without drama, David said, his voice pure ice. They're about to get a very dramatic Christmas. As David and I were finalizing the demand letter, he paused. Just as a precaution, he said, I want to check your credit report. We need to make sure your name isn't tied to any other debts we don't know about, just to be clean. It felt like a formality. I logged into my credit monitoring account. My score was excellent, 8 to 10. Everything was in good order. Credit cards all paid. Student loans paid in full. And then I scrolled down to mortgage accounts. There was my primary mortgage, the one on my own condo, and then there was a second entry. Lender City National Bank. Account type, home equity line of credit. Balance $150,000. Date opened June 2022. I just stared at it. David, I said, my voice barely a whisper. What is this? He came over to my laptop and looked at the screen. His face went pale. Liz, that's a HELOC for $150,000. It was opened 3 years ago. I've never banked with City National, I said, my mind racing. I've never taken out a HELOC. I would know if I signed for $150,000. David was silent for a full minute, his legal mind working faster than I could follow. Liz, he said slowly, when did your parents add you to the deed of their house? Ages ago, I said, when I turned 18. They said it was for estate planning. You know, to protect the asset in case something happened to them. I never thought about it again. David looked at me. With a loan this large, the bank would require the signatures of all named owners on the deed. David, I did not sign that. He stood up and grabbed his coat. We're going to City National right now. We are going to request the original loan documents. The next morning was a blur. We sat in a sterile bank office. David handled everything, presenting his bar card, demanding the physical copies of the loan application from June 2022. It took an hour. Finally, a manager returned with a thick file. He slid it across the table. David opened it. He flipped past the disclosures, the terms, the payment schedules. He stopped on the last page, the signature page. He turned the document around to face me. There it was, the signature of my father, Richard, the signature of my mother, Karen, and right below theirs, a sloppy, hesitant forgery that looked nothing like my actual signature next to my printed name, Elizabeth Matthews. I felt the air leave my lungs. It wasn't just shock. It was a physical coldness. And then the final sickening realization hit me. The $1,500 a month, the mortgage payment I'd been sending them for 2 years to save the house from foreclosure. I wasn't saving them. I was paying the interest on a fraudulent $150,000 loan they had taken out in my name. David closed the file. He looked at me, his eyes dark. My God, Liz, he said, they're not just parasites, they're criminals. We didn't send the $86,000 demand letter. We had something much heavier now. David and I, along with the senior fraud investigator from the bank, presented our findings. The bank's reaction was swift and merciless. An internal investigation was launched. The HELOC was immediately frozen, and the full loan was declared called due based on fraudulent origination. The bank didn't care about our family drama. They cared about their $150,000. Since I was the victim of the forgery, I was absolved of the debt. But the bank turned its full legal weight onto the other 2 signatories, my father Richard and my mother Karen. They were issued a formal demand, repay the entire $150,000 plus interest within 30 days or the bank would initiate immediate foreclosure proceedings on the house. For 7 full days, there was nothing. Silence. I imagined the panicked phone calls, the arguments, the desperate attempts to find a solution that didn't involve me. I knew they were stewing in the consequences. Then on Sunday night it came. Not a phone call, not an email. A frantic, desperate pounding on my condo's front door. It was almost 10 p.m. I looked through the peephole. It was my mother, Karen, and my brother, Ryan. They looked awful. My mother's eyes were red and swollen, her hair a mess. Ryan, the golden boy, looked gaunt, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, staring at the floor. I opened the door. David stood just behind me, his arms crossed. "Elizabeth!" "Thank God!" my mother cried, lunging forward to hug me. I took a half step back. Her arms fell awkwardly. "You have to stop this," she sobbed, her voice cracking. "The bank, they're taking the house, Elizabeth. They're going to foreclose your father. He's a wreck. You have to call them." "Call them and say what, Mom?" I asked. My voice was calm, steady. It scared her more than if I had yelled. "Tell them it was a misunderstanding." Ryan finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "Just tell them you signed it, that it's okay. You can. You can co-sign it again for real. We can work out payments, Liz. Please." I stared at my brother. After everything, after the email, after the vote, after the forgery, they still saw me as the solution. They still thought I would light myself on fire to keep them warm. "You're asking me," I said, "to commit bank fraud, to cover up your bank fraud." "We didn't have a choice," my mother shrieked. "You don't understand Ryan. He was in trouble with gambling. People were. They were going to hurt him. We had to pay them. We knew you would never agree if we asked. So it wasn't a bad investment. It wasn't saving the house. It was bailing out the golden boy again. And they had used my name, my credit, my entire financial future as collateral without my knowledge. "Please," Elizabeth, Ryan begged. "I'll pay you back. I swear. Just don't let them take the house." "You have nothing to pay me back with, Ryan," I said. I turned to my mother. "You asked me in that email what I wanted for Thanksgiving." She looked at me, confused, her face stained with tears. "I want peace," I said, "and I want my money." I turned to David. He stepped forward and handed my mother a single folded document. "What is this?" she whispered. "That," David said, "is your only option. It's a settlement agreement. You will agree to an immediate voluntary sale of the house. From the proceeds, you will pay the bank its $150,000. You will then pay Elizabeth the $86,000 she is owed for the catering contract, the boot camp, and the mortgage payments. In exchange, she will not participate in the bank's criminal investigation for forgery." My mother's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the paper. She looked at the numbers, then at me. You're taking everything," she whispered. "This is everything we have." "No," I said, my voice as cold and hard as the lock on the door. "I'm just taking back what's mine. Goodbye, Mom." I closed the door. They had no choice. Faced with criminal prosecution for fraud or the voluntary sale of the house, they chose the path that kept them out of jail. The house, the one I had grown up in, the one they had committed fraud to keep, was sold in a rush. It went for less than it was worth, but it was enough. The bank was paid its $150,000. 2 weeks later, I received a wire transfer for $86,000, the exact amount I had poured into that family over the years. It wasn't a profit, it was a refund. I heard through the grapevine what happened next. My father and mother, Richard and Karen, with the small amount left over, moved into a small 2-bedroom rental apartment across town. The grand stage for their family drama was gone. Ryan, my golden boy brother, with his gambling debts no longer serviceable by fraudulent loans, was forced to get an actual entry-level job at a logistics company to help them pay the rent. And Megan, my sister, and my Aunt Melanie. I heard they were furious. Not at me. They were furious at my parents for mismanaging the family's assets for losing their inheritance. The family, just as I'd suspected, had finally imploded under the weight of its own greed. That night, I received the alert on my phone, wire transfer complete. I opened my laptop. David sat beside me, his hand resting on my shoulder. I didn't open my bank account. I didn't look at the new balance. Instead, I opened a new browser tab. I went to an airline website. "What are you doing?" David asked. "You asked me where I wanted to go for Thanksgiving," I said. My fingers typed in the destination C, D, G, Paris. 2 first-class tickets, non-refundable. I clicked confirm. A week later, we were on a plane 30,000 feet over the Atlantic. As I watched the digital map show us leaving the coast of North America behind, I thought about that phone call. Megan's call, the call for the pumpkin pie recipe. It was so clear to me now. They had never seen me. They only saw the function I provided. The cook, the planner, the bank, the guarantor. In society, there are really 2 currencies of success. The first is economic capital, the one my family worshipped. It's money, titles, assets, the house, things you can count. The second is impact capital, the currency I had been dealing in. Its influence, skill, reliability, and the ability to bring value to a community. The struggle for people like me is forcing others to see that our impact capital has value. But here's the tragedy. My family could never recognize my impact capital, my skills, my reliability, my love, until I finally and forcefully cashed it in for economic capital. I had to take their house to make them see my worth. They had spent their lives chasing the appearance of economic capital Ryan's image, the big house, and in the end, their obsession with it cost them everything. I sipped my champagne. I had lost a family, but I had gained something far more valuable. Myself. It's been a year since that email. I'm standing in the kitchen of my new condo downtown. It's Thanksgiving. The air smells like roasted ribs and sage, not turkey and obligation. David is pouring wine for our guests. A few close colleagues from my firm and my cousin, the only one who ever texted me to see if I was okay. This is my new tradition, my chosen family. I'm making my own stuffing recipe, one I invented myself. It's not my grandmother's. I heard my parents are still in that small rental apartment. Ryan is still working that logistics job. I don't wish them ill. Honestly, I don't think about them at all. I learned that when you are the fixer in a family, the only way to heal is to put down your toolbox and walk away. You have to let people face the consequences of their own choices. I spent a decade trying to earn a seat at their table, only to realize I was just the unpaid caterer. I learned that trying to win a place at their table was a waste of my energy. So I built my own, CM02. It's smaller, but everyone here is truly grateful to be here. I learned the hard way that you aren't being selfish when you finally set a boundary. You are simply finally setting a boundary for people who are. Have you ever been in a situation where you were the family bank or the family fixer? What was the moment that made you realize it had to stop? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to read them.